Michael in Bangor, Maine. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind?
Tom, thanks for not saying banger.
You're welcome.
Long-time listener to your show. I am sort of your classic 18th century liberal. I know there's a lot of confusion these days between 21st century liberals and 18. But anyway, I was listening intently to your conversation with the professor about fascism. And one of the things that sort of disturbs me, and I listen to Progress a lot, is that there's a conflation between people who are white in the United States as being fascist, but then there is no conflation between socialism being just as totalitarian, at least in terms of what's happened in historical times. And I just wish I could see a little bit more discussion instead of sort of mirroring or just focusing on whites and racism, which is obviously a problem. I'm not demeaning it or at all or playing it down.
Diminishing it, yeah.
But there are other types of isms that are happening on the left, in the center.
Michael, let me be very clear about something. The government of the Soviet Union, as reinvented by Lenin and then Stalin, they called themselves socialist. They called themselves communist. I frankly don't think they were either one. I don't think Marx would have recognized it. It was a right-wing totalitarian government. It used violence and the threat of violence against its own people in order to keep people in line. And you can, and to a substantial extent, that has also been true in a number of other countries that are, quote, socialist. You could make that same charge against Castro in Cuba, particularly in the early days, and you can make that same charge, and I think Cuba is actually, transforming itself into more of a democratic socialist country, but, that's a whole other conversation. And Hugo Chavez and Maduro in Venezuela. Nobody, literally nobody, not one single Democratic politician in the United States, even so-called far-left Bernie Sanders, who's not as far-left as Franklin Roosevelt, who proposed that housing and a job should be considered a right in the United States, just like education and health care. He wanted all four of those things to be considered rights that would be provided by the government, lacking, the ability of capitalism to provide those things. Even Bernie doesn't go that far. There is not a single Democratic politician in America who is advocating the kind of socialism and communism that we saw back then. Democratic socialism is what you have in Canada. Democratic socialism is what you have in all of the European countries. That's what they call it there. And that is where you have a strong social safety net, where the government provides health care at the very least and education, essentially for free. Obviously, nothing's for free. We all pay for it with our taxes, but provides it at a lower cost than the so-called free market would, than capitalism would, because there's nobody skimming money off the top, and also encourages competition and capitalism. And that is what the Democrats are proposing. So it seems to me, Michael, that you're bringing up something that's a complete straw man argument.
No, I'm not trying to bring up a straw man argument, because the problem is it's not all. I disagree with you, by the way.
Name one Democrat who has ever said that they want the United States to be like the Soviet Union.
Well, why would they say that? That would be self-defeating.
They would say that if they believed that. You're asserting that there are Democrats who want the United States to be like the Soviet Union or Cuba. I'm saying name one.
Okay, Jill Stein.
Jill Stein is not a Democrat. She's the head of the Green Party.
But that's not my point. My point is that there are people who are...
And she's not elected. She's never been elected to anything.
I understand, but there are people on the left who are...
And I don't think Jill Stein is calling for America to be like the Soviet Union. I
heard her saying that.
Well, I'm not here to defend Jill Stein, but I'm saying, Michael, that I realize that the message that you're getting on right-wing hate radio and on Fox News, and out of Trump's mouth, that the message you're getting is that Democrats want to embrace a Soviet-style state. And you're getting that from the Koch brothers, from Freedom Works around, health care. And in fact, that was the message that they were...
I don't listen to them.
When they were pumping the Tea Party back in the day and paying, having these $300,000 buses, take, poor, confused, boomers around to say, get your government hands off my damn Medicare. They were basically saying this is Soviet-style socialism. And it's a lie. It's just a simple lie. There are no Democrats who are proposing anything even remotely close to Soviet-style socialism. In their most radical proposals, they're proposing things that Canada already has, which is, education that you can easily pay for, and health care that's covered, where we're all in a giant pool with health care, so it can be provided at a low cost and high quality.
You can do that with capitalism too if you have faith in the system.
No, you can't. And I would point out, the crimes of Big Pharma, the crimes of the insurance industry, the fact that you've got one insurance company, United Healthcare, that has the last two CEOs both took over $1 billion out of that company, and every penny of that was United Healthcare saying to somebody, and it could have been you, Michael, no, you can't have that new expensive drug to cure your hep C, or no, you can't have that operation because, we don't want to pay for it, or because you had a pre-existing condition, or because you didn't fill out your forms right. You and I both know that capitalism, when it's applied to things that are the public good, tends to basically extract money from the public, which is what capitalism does. I mean, that's its job, and it's fine if it's making blue jeans or computers. I'm all in favor of that, right? But if it has to do with the public good, things like healthcare, things like education, over and over and over again, when you turn those things over to capitalist systems, what you end up is people being ripped off.
Well, this is the kind of discussion that I would like to see more people having. I disagree with you. I think that the redistribution of wealth, which is what is at the basis of everything that the Democrats are arguing, whether you want to call it socialism or not, when you have the markets regulated without any notion of free market, that you're going to redistribute, who is making the decisions to redistribute?
Michael, there's no such thing as a free market, number one. And number two, you're talking about redistributing income.
Well, there's no such thing as a pure free market, but there is as much a free market as you can try to make without having the excesses that you are talking
since
about.
Reaganism, since we changed from... Well, hang on just a second here. You've raised two things now. Since we changed from FDR-ism to Reaganism, from an economic policy promoted by John Maynard Keynes to an economic policy promoted by Milton Friedman, what we have seen since Reagan became president is the transfer of something on the order of $6 or $7 trillion of wealth out of the pockets of the middle class and into the pockets of the top 1%. That is absolutely undisputable. So if you want to talk about transfer of wealth, it's going the wrong way from my point of view. I forget what the other point I was going to make.
That the reason for that is not capitalism as much as what we have.
No, the reason for that is that capitalists have rigged the tax structure by buying politicians.
Well, that's always going to happen, whether you're in a communism or... No,
this is my second point, Michael. You would not want to go to a football game that did not have referees enforcing the rules. It would not be interesting. It would not be fair. And in capitalism, we have to have, capitalism only functions well when there is competition. And when Reagan started deregulating capitalism in the United States, what he basically did away with is competition. You've got 4 or 5 companies who own the airline industry, who own the internet service provider industry, who own the television industry, who own the radio industry, who own the agriculture industry. I mean, name an industry of transportation, name an industry that's not dominated by at the most 5 companies. That is anti-competitive. It's making it almost impossible for small and medium-sized businesses to grow and prosper. And when they do, the business plan now is get to the point where you can be bought out quickly before one of these big companies squashes you like a bug. That is anti-competitive. This whole deregulation thing is destroying capitalism.
Now, wait a second. There's a difference between easing regulatory stuff and enforcing the antitrust laws, which is something we don't do.
The antitrust laws are regulation.
I didn't say that some regulation isn't good.
Well, in 1982, Reagan officially stopped enforcing the antitrust laws, and he called that deregulation. And what did we get out of that? We got the M&A, the mergers and acquisition mania that happened throughout the Reagan administration. Right now, there are 50% fewer public companies in the United States. 50% fewer publicly traded companies than there were in 1980. Why is that? Because of consolidation, because of Reagan's deregulation. And that's not good for capitalism, Michael.
the bottom line is I agree with you about putting together as much competition, free market as we can, regulated by good common sense. I support
No, it's regulated by government.
I support.
You can't have capitalism without government creating the framework, just like you can't have a football game without the NFL saying, here's the rules.
Well, I understand, but there are Democrats too. Tom, the problem isn't that you're not identifying problems. The problem, from my point of view, is that it's always the right that's the problem. It's not the corporatist like Hillary Clinton. If you went after her like you went after the people on the right, we might have some semblance of commonality.
There are corporatists, Michael, I'll give you. There are corporatists in both parties. But your party, the Republican Party, is entirely corporatist, and the Democratic Party is only about half corporatist.
That's all right.
Well, even Jason Amash. I mean, or Justin Amash.
Well, he's not a Republican.
He's a libertarian.
By the way, I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent.
Okay.
I got tired of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Okay. But my point is that corporatism, yes, is destroying the United States and is destroying capitalism and is rewriting the rules, and a lot of it can be traced back to the Supreme Court's 1976 Buckley versus Vallejo decision that formed the basis of Citizens United. And that's something where perhaps you and I agree. But when we get in these arguments about regulation, deregulation, start using this kind of language, I think that we just miss the point.